Hey guys, Moose here. Welcome back to another episode of Life is Feudal Forest Village. Didn't realize I had a pause there. It is spring. It is finally above freezing. I recall we had a long freeze last year. Let's go ham. I've got enough spots for 12 people on the farm. I got 11 people here. I'm going to pull 3 off of hunting, because I genuinely believe that it is very likely that the farms will outproduce the hunters. Which kind of makes sense. Actually, it makes perfect sense, because if you... well, actually not necessarily. It would be... if you wanted all... oh man, actually no, that wouldn't work that way. It really depends on the balance. So, okay, let me walk you through my logic here. If you were to say, hey, we're going to measure everything by a year, so how long does a farmer, or how much food does a single farmer typically, at base level or whatever, whatever level of upgrade you want to measure at, how much food per year does a farmer make? It'd be whatever, let's call it 100, and then, you know, hunter, same thing. You say, yeah, it should be 100 too, right? But it's not that simple, because even if you said that was ideal conditions, the farmer doesn't work the whole year, so you could actually take the farmer and make them a hunter in the summer. So I wasn't thinking about that when I started that sentence. But I do think that even if you balanced hunter to produce more to compensate for the fact that it has to go all year, or doesn't, like, just get everything done in like 2 seasons or whatever, however you want to put it. It's really 3 seasons, but whatever, you get the point. Even then, I think probably the farmer makes more. Even if you said a hunter... even if it basically, if you had a farmer for 1 whole year and they did nothing else, and you had a hunter for 1 whole year and they did nothing else, I think the farmer would still win that. And I think that's just the way the game's balanced. I'm pretty confident farming is like the most... I guess you would say cost-efficient way to produce manpower, because you're not dealing with money, but manpower is valuable. It has a value associated with it. And you could call that cost, so it makes sense. In my opinion, anyway. I actually feel totally comfortable pulling everyone off of hunting, because I want stone. Because we need to look at expanding our little base here. Do I go out? I can't go out, right? Oh, I might have enough room for another building there. Do I? Actually, I should check this. Can you guys squeeze in here? No, you actually can't. Okay, that's a problem. Alright, well, this is not the most well planned out city. I'll own that. It is what it is, unfortunately. I can always move stuff around. Rebuilding is not really a huge deal. So, I don't really have too much to talk about today. It's been... I would say it hasn't been a quiet week. I've gotten calls pretty much 24/7, not 24/7, but pretty much from 8:30 when I have my first meeting to 10 p.m. I've had phone calls and meetings and work to do, so it's been non-stop, but it hasn't really been like really bad non-stop, I guess, if that makes any sense at all. Like, I had a 10 p.m. meeting on Monday night, which was ridiculous. But necessary, and that's, you know, sometimes that's part of working with people all around the world, you know, you want to accommodate their time zone, you know, it's not all about America. Even though we like to think it is sometimes. So, I've been busy, but it hasn't really felt that bad. If anything, I'm mostly just, like, I'm not super stressed or anything, I just wish I had more free time to spend on stuff, because I've been thinking about stories a lot, and thinking about all kinds of stuff. I had some family in town recently, and I had a really fun, like, 2 to 3 hour long chat with an uncle of mine, who's actually a guy who kind of got me into gaming. Or not, no, that's not really fair to say. Like, he definitely had a hand in it, but I was already on that path, I think, by that time. But he kind of, like, growing up I had very limited options for gaming. Like PC gaming was never really an option for a long time when I was a kid. Like I had to kind of fight for that. And even then I was looking at really mostly just low end, exclusively very low end, you know, emulated stuff along those lines. I didn't really have access to anything that was new or interesting for the most part. So it was pretty much like Game Boy. I eventually got an N64, played SNES at a friend's place. Not very often, but occasionally. Things like that. But I never really had anything like new or cutting edge or anything like that when I was a kid. But when I went to go visit family around Christmas time, my uncle had the first Warcraft. Very first Warcraft. So he showed me that, and that was like a whole new world, because my exposure to video games, I think at that point, had maybe just been like SimAnt and like some terrible Mac games from the early 90s. Just really terrible, like stuff that you wouldn't even be able to find the name of these days. Just garbage. But it was cool, because it was new. And, you know, as a kid, garbage is okay. Like, if you've been around kids lately, I'm sure, you know, they're not very exacting standards for quality among children. Like, they're kind of good with trash. I mean, look at what's popular on YouTube, and you can see that clear as day. Not at all pissed off about that, but anyway, you get the idea. So he was kind of my window to a degree into all that, and you know, he would get us. We played Risk at Christmas for a while. We played occasionally board games. He still plays board games apparently with his friends, similar to me, though I don't get to do it as much anymore. He was actually talking about designing a board game, which is really cool. I would buy the hell out of that. I would love to see that take off. No idea what it would be like. So we talked about board games, we talked about games, we talked about tech and philosophy and stuff. Like, it was a really, really good conversation. I really enjoyed talking to him. He also got me, he played D&D, so I would have gotten into it anyway, because that was my group of friends, but, you know, it felt like I wasn't, like, doing something dark and insidious. Like, I was like, oh yeah, my uncle did this, so it's, you know, it's fine. He's cool. He's a good dude. He's... When I think of what kind of person he is, I think of him as being... He's basically like, in many ways, the same as me, but much more... a much better person, I guess. And what I mean by that is, he's not as aggressive, he's more accommodating, he's more friendly, he's more polite. Probably less assertive, I would say. I think my life experiences have given, and I would say that's a benefit for me. The problem with being assertive, and this is the American way, and if you're not American, this is kind of something that I think might inform kind of how you see Americans. In some cultures, and this isn't, the difference here isn't as big as it's going to sound, but in some cultures you'd have, I mean, I can only really speak for Canadian culture, personally, so I'm just going to go with Canadian culture. Canadian culture is much more passive, and, like, I'd say Japanese culture is probably another good example. Like, you don't want to have to ask for something, you don't want to have to assert yourself and say, no, this is what I want, and this is what I need you to do. Like, ideally, you don't do that. Like, it's a little bit... in Canadian culture, I wouldn't say it's a faux pas, really, because it's pretty Americanized, but, like, you could see there's a difference in how willing people are to cross that line, basically. I would say Americans are probably more assertive and more aggressive in pursuing what they want than Canadians are, by and large. And again, we're very, very similar. Canadians and Americans are very similar. There's not a whole lot of difference there, but there is a little bit. Culturally with the US, basically the way it works, it's like, it's not prisoner's dilemma, but it's kind of the similar concept. Like, if one person acts that way and is aggressive and assertive, and kind of make sure that they get what they want. To a degree, everyone else has to do the same thing to kind of keep up. So it kind of perpetuates itself, if that makes any sense. And my uncle's American. He's not half Canadian, it's the other side of the family. Or he's not Canadian, that's the other side of the family. But he's still more like that, less aggressive, I guess I would say. So what I'm getting at is when I say I think me being aggressive and assertive is an advantage to me, I think it's a disadvantage to everyone around me because it's basically saying, all right, well, you either have to act this way or you're going to lose out. And I don't screw people over. I don't. But at the same time, socially, when you're acting that way, it kind of like, there are times where I feel like I'm asserting my will on a situation. It's not totally fair. So I try not to do it too much. But, you know, it is what it is. And to a degree, the American attitude is, look, if you're not going to figure it out for yourself and take care of yourself, well, I'm sorry, it's not really my problem. You gotta go deal with it yourself. So, to a degree, my perspective could be, I'm not saying it is, but it could be, it's like, well, not my problem. If you're not taking care of yourself, then that's something you gotta figure out. But I kind of lost track of how we got on this topic, but it's an interesting topic anyway. If you're not American, I think it'll tell you a little bit about how Americans work. And if you are, maybe it's, I think a lot of people don't really think about what goes on. A lot of people don't really, they just kind of go through life, they do their thing. They're focused on what's happening, they're focused on what's in front of them. They're not really thinking about why or how. And I'm not saying that because I think people are stupid or don't pay attention to those things. I'm saying it because I've seen people not pay attention to those things, and I've seen people, not that I'm suggesting that any of you guys are, but I've seen people that are stupid. And I've seen a lot of people that are stupid. And that's one of the points that came up in our conversation, was basically like, in high school and college, and really throughout my life until I entered the workforce, I thought I was like, not bottom of the barrel, but I didn't think I was very smart. I didn't think I was very capable. I didn't think I was very good at much of anything. And then I worked retail. And you could just clip it right there, and anyone who's ever worked retail is going to know exactly what the hell I'm talking about, unless they're that guy. When you work retail, you get a view of society that I would say perhaps most people are not typically afforded. And what I mean by that is you realize very quickly that the average human being is a complete fucking idiot. And not to be, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, I'm so smart, I'm a genius. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that there are people out there who are stupid beyond belief. And they're not like, it's not like, oh, well, yeah, they live over there. And, you know, the typical thing for someone in California would be, oh, yeah, those are the people in Texas and Alabama and Mississippi. No, they're not. They're here, too. They're everywhere. They're fucking everywhere. And they're dumb as hell. And that's okay. Because, I mean, it better be okay, because that's the way it is, but you have to kind of think in those terms sometimes, and you can't just assume, like, that's one big problem I have at work, is not, I'm jerking myself off here. I'm basically saying, like, oh, look at me, I'm so smart, I have trouble interacting with people at work. But honestly, there's times at work where, like, just today I had one of my coworkers, like, I developed, she's one of the people who's using the program that I wrote, basically. And she was like, hey, there's a problem. I'm like, okay, well, I don't really understand what exactly was the problem, like, what are you seeing? And she's like, oh, nothing worked. And then she left. I'm just like, what exactly do you want me to do here, lady? Do you expect to... I think she was really just like... No, there's two versions. One version is she's a moron, and she just doesn't understand. The second version is she's still stupid, but she was covering her bases and saying, like, oh yeah, I couldn't do my job because this wasn't there, so nothing got done. Both of those are equally possible, I would say, unfortunately. I don't have a very high estimation of her intelligence. She hasn't been that great, but that's a whole different story. Everyone, and that's okay, because that some people, that's reality. Like, not everyone is going to be able to, you know, do some of the things that I do. And that doesn't mean that I'm a genius. It's just, you know, if someone's 50 years old, maybe they haven't been exposed to that kind of information or knowledge. And it's not really reasonable to hold that against them, because you invalidate your workforce every 20 years or something. Like, you can't operate that way as a business. So it is what it is. And it works okay here, though I did just question her work ethic, which is more at the core of the issue than her skills or intelligence, I would say. It's one thing if she's just like, she doesn't get it, and I have to kind of drag it out of her to figure out what the problem was. That's mostly fine. It wouldn't be fine if she just was using that as a reason to, like, well, I'm not going to do anything now. Bye, and just leave. Because now 2 other people have to do that work. And if 2 other people have to do that work because there was an issue and she couldn't do it, okay, yeah, cool, whatever, we'll cover for it. We're a team, we work together. But if it's out of laziness, that's a different story. But I don't know, and I'm not her manager anyway, so it's not really my problem. But yeah. I don't know if I'm really working towards a specific point here. These are just some of the topics that we discussed, and it was interesting. And it got me thinking a lot about stories, because he was talking about doing one-shot D&D campaigns, or he was saying, like, hey, I want to do D&D, but I don't know how to do it quickly enough to, like, actually accomplish anything. And I basically said, like, well, you could do one-shots, where you basically just do, it's one campaign, you do the thing that's that day, and then it's done. And you basically could even make them interconnected and basically treat it like TV episodes, like you're writing a season, and they don't have to be really all that connected or even the same characters, but you could kind of connect events still. You could make it a cool thing where, like, they're playing, you know, it's a world war and they're playing different factions. You know, one week they're like a group of commandos from one of the factions, the other week they're grunts from another one, and they're to, like, learning the story and what's going on, and maybe there's some crazy manipulation going on in the background, and they're not actually, no one's actually evil, or none of the people fighting the war are evil, and now we're kind of into basically the plot of one of the Ace Combat games, but you get the idea. So there's cool stuff you can do there where it doesn't have to be the same every time. You don't have to it doesn't have to be continuation. It could just be one-shots, basically, and still have, like, a contiguous story going on. So I was telling him that, and I don't think he knew about the concept of a one-shot, probably because, like, someone from my generation is more likely to read about this kind of thing online, and read about, like, hey, there's a subreddit for D&D, okay, go check it out. Some shit like that, whereas he probably wouldn't do that. I don't know if this, like, I don't know if this is true for his generation as a whole, but he seems to be more interested in podcasts, particularly interviews of authors and stuff. He's well read. He's very well read, and he's also very intelligent. So he had some really good advice for, like, hey, you know, go read this podcast, or go read this book and listen to this podcast, or this author's cool, or this guy's cool. So it was really informative and interesting to talk to him. And it's kind of, to me, or for me anyway, it feels like looking into a mirror to an extent, because he genuinely is, like, he's me if I was a bit less of a dick. I guess is the way that I'd put it. So, like, I think everything that he is something I could be. I feel like I have it in me, but I don't know. It really comes down, I think it's particularly meaningful for me because if I look at him, his objective in life, I think I'm very much motivated. We both have goals. We're both people. We both have things we want out of our lives. I think he's much more driven by happiness and enjoyment of life and fulfillment and connections with people and being happy, basically, like all that kind of stuff. And it's not that I don't want that, but I'm much more driven by finances. I'm much more driven by I want a big house, or I want to have a $3,000 professional grade camera drone that I can go fly up while hiking and take beautiful panoramic shots of nature. I'm driven by that kind of thing. I'm driven by like monetary goals, basically. And it's interesting to see like, hey, I could be this person if I was driven by different things. If I decided to change the focus of my life, I could be that. And it's a really interesting thing, because I think a lot of the time when you have family, you typically don't have people who are that similar to you, and I really do think he and I are very, very similar. We have a slight tweak in personality and a significant difference in goals, but goals are more of a choice than personality is, I would say. Anyway, that's not even remotely close to what I was planning on talking about for this episode. Going into it, I was like, hey, I just tried PUBG again, and it's trash, so let's talk about that. It's not total trash, but I'll save that for the next one. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Hope you'll join us in the next one as well. If you did enjoy it, there's always twitch.tv/electronicmoose. I'm putting more of my time into the Twitch streams, so feel free to come by Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, 6 to 8 p.m. PST, 9 to 11 p.m. EST, to check out a stream if you would like. If not, thanks for watching here on YouTube, and I will see you next time. Take care.